Sometimes I get this anxiety that I'm going to fail. Like I start to overthink, and my insecurities and my self-doubts start to have me question whether or not I'm gonna be successful, what my future is gonna look like, whether or not I'm actually cut out to do YouTube. And I know for me, negative thoughts can be very debilitating. They can cause you to obsess over little details and take the passion out of your work, or even sometimes cause you to not want to work on the thing that you are passionate about because you start to be afraid of failure, right? And we all have these insecurities and anxieties and self-doubts that all come up within us sometimes. And I think we've all kind of been taught to push them away as quickly as we can, right? Like I know for me, whenever I have negative thoughts, it's like, it almost feels like an intruder, like in my mind. I felt like for so long, I only had space for positivity, especially when I started getting into spirituality and reading a lot of spirituality books. I didn't understand, like when I was meditating, when I would start to have negative thoughts, I would get frustrated because I was like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be feeling positive. I'm doing things right? Like I'm working out. Why do I still feel like shit? And it was almost like this active fight with my mind and even my body against negative thoughts, because my body would even tense up whenever I would start to feel any kind of insecurities or anxieties, and I didn't know how to handle them. A lot of times when I eventually got tired of ignoring them or trying to fight them, I would get into really deep stages of anxiety and depression. I would start to believe a lot of the insecurities and self-doubts that my mind was telling me, and I would start to really identify with them. And there was one day I remember where I was working with my therapist, and she asked me, she was like, what would happen if you just sat with those thoughts instead of trying to fight them or ignore them or whatever? What if you just sit with them and let them be there? And I don't remember exactly how I answered her, but I do remember in that moment, I started to realize that a lot of my anxiety wasn't coming from the actual negative thoughts themselves. It was coming from the way that I reacted to them and the way that I felt about them. Even when I wasn't identifying with my negative thoughts or believing them to be true, when I would try to push them away and fight them or even try to actively ignore them, I realized that it was exerting a lot of my energy because I was spending so much time and effort trying to run away from these feelings that I didn't want to be there instead of actually sitting with them and facing them. And this is totally natural, right? I think a lot of us do this, especially as we start to try to be more positive. We actively look for ways to avoid negativity, right? Like we see negativity as this bad thing, but it's crazy because I'm telling you guys, the more that I've learned how to sit with my negative thoughts and observe them and learn from them, my relationship with myself has changed dramatically. Every night plus every day up. Every day patches. When my therapist first had brought up this idea of sitting with my negative thoughts, I was a little bit like confused because I was like, I don't understand how we're supposed to do this. This doesn't feel good. Like you're supposed to be helping me feel better, and me sitting here meditating and embracing these anxieties and these insecurities that I'm feeling, this doesn't feel good. And I think anyone who's experienced feelings of anxiety can kind of identify the most with a feeling of fear that kind of runs through their body, right? So for me, when I would feel these anxieties, it was almost like I could physically feel fear. And I feel like I talk about fear at this point in every single video, but it's because it's so much of an underlying feeling in every negative feeling that we're experiencing, right? Like if you're sad about something, if you're angry about something, a lot of times that core negative feeling, when you really get down to the root of it, is fear. And a lot of times these fears are coming from some kind of root source that when you start to observe and really kind of dive deep into them, you will start to learn more about yourself. And this is what some people call shadow work, but it's basically you really diving deeper into and understanding what your negative thoughts are trying to tell you. And what I've learned is that it's actually very necessary if you want to grow past certain fears. And so for me now, I have a lot less negative thoughts. Like I'm not as anxious as I used to be. I'm not as insecure as I used to be about a lot of things because I've been able to deal with the root source of my problems and really understand where those negative thoughts were coming from. And also realizing that a lot of times, most of these things that I was stressed about in the past, they don't really have power over me anymore. The legend. When you're meditating, I think a lot of people have this assumption that you meditate to get rid of negative thoughts, right? But for me, I've definitely started learning over the past few years that meditating is really good for observing and sitting with your negative thoughts. So the cool thing about meditation is you get to actually watch your thoughts come and go. I remember one of my best friends from high school, she was one of the first people who gave me this really good analogy when it came to meditation. She was like, imagine that you are a mountain, right? And everything that passes you by, like a cloud or a bird, right? Like you're observing it, you're seeing it, but it's temporary, right? Because it's always going to be passing you by. So when you're meditating, it's not about just having positive birds fly overhead, right? You might have some clouds, some rain pass you by, you might have some stormy weather, whatever. But the cool thing about meditation is you're this mountain, right? So you're always here. So anytime you feel some kind of negative thoughts, they go away. You don't have to identify with them because everything is temporary. And I really started to learn that as I started understanding that when a negative thought does come up, I don't have to react to it. I don't have to be scared of it, because I think that's a lot of times what I would be feeling. I would get this anxiety because I was like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to deal with this emotion. I don't want to even feel it, right? But when you learn to accept them and sit with them, they don't have to have power over you, right? Like, you can understand that eventually is going to go away. And the more that I started meditating, the more that I started doing that and practicing it, the more comfortable I became as negative thoughts would start to come up while I was meditating, but also throughout my day, right? So like, even me right now, I literally, if you guys couldn't tell, I keep having to jump in and out of work meetings, like in the middle of filming this. Like, I'm trying really hard not to get frustrated like with my current situation. It's not going to help my current situation in any way to fall victim to, or like to give power to my negative thoughts, right? Like, if anything, what I can do and what I have been trying to do is let my negative feelings towards my current situation fuel me into doing this. So meditating and breathing has really helped me with those in the moment negative thoughts and learning how to deal with them in the moment, especially because, we may be busy, right? Like, we don't have time to explore and understand and learn from our negative thoughts at all times of the day. If we're at work, if we're at school, if we're doing something, if we're hanging out with people that may trigger us and trigger some negative feelings, like, we don't have time in that moment to sit there and explore them. But the more you start meditating and kind of breathing and even giving yourself that room to go step out of a room and go sit on your balcony for a little bit, or go take 5 minutes to go meditate in between your classes or something, like, when you give yourself that space, you can really get through those negative thoughts and let them pass in that moment, and then go learn from them if they continue to pop up. So for me, journaling has been probably like the number one tool for me when it comes to doing shadow work. So again, shadow work is really just taking time to learn about and understand and really dissect your negative thoughts and why you may be feeling them. So what I recently started doing, I want to say in maybe January, is I would take time, not every single day, but maybe like a few times a week. I would sit down with my journal and start writing down negative things that I was feeling throughout my week. And what I would do is I would start with what I was feeling and what kind of caused me to start feeling this way. But then I would start getting a little bit deeper, and instead of being like angry at a specific person or focusing on the situation, I would really focus on what underlying insecurities or fears or self-doubts that situation trigger for me, right? Like, I know for me, for example, you guys know, if you guys watch my vlogs, I've been really struggling to cut off some toxic friendships from like my college years. And for me, like, especially in the past few months, whenever I would be around those people, I would start to get really anxious and really stressed out and really just like uncomfortable, right? So I would go home, I would go into my journal, and I of course would write down like what exactly made me feel that way. But I would go even deeper and I would start writing down like what underlying feelings did I already know that I had that situation triggered for me, right? So for me, I know I have insecurities that make me believe that no one wants me around. So when I was around certain people, I was able to understand like these feelings from your childhood are being brought up when you're around certain people. So it's not only those people that make you feel this way, but it's also these things that happen in your childhood that are also being mixed in with your emotions, right? Because our inner child still is with us to this day, right? So a lot of these negative feelings that you're feeling are coming from your inner child, or some things that you maybe never dealt with from your childhood, right? Not every negative emotion comes from childhood trauma, don't get me wrong. Like, again, if someone's shitty towards you, they're just a shitty person. But I will say journaling has really helped me uncover a lot of things from my childhood. Like, again, that feeling of me feeling like I never fit in as a kid. I didn't realize that until I started doing a lot of shadow work, until I started really observing my negative thoughts in reaction to situations that are happening right now. And really what it helped me do is it helped me understand what I need for myself in the present, right? So I know for myself, I probably don't need to be around people who trigger these negative feelings from my childhood, right? But also by being aware of my childhood, I can understand the control that I have over those negative feelings in reaction to those negative people when I do have to be around them, right? So it's kind of giving you that power back over any negative thing that you're feeling, right? So hopefully that makes sense. there's a lot of things that we can't change about our current reality. And naturally, you're gonna have a lot of negative thoughts if you're around toxic people and in a toxic work environment, or if you're just, and I hate the word toxic, if you guys know what I mean. If you're in an environment that triggers you or makes you upset, naturally you're gonna have negative feelings, right? But I will say a lot of our own limiting beliefs will keep us in situations and make us feel trapped in situations that we don't necessarily need to be in. And the more that you kind of pay attention to your negative thoughts, where they're coming from, the more shadow work you do, the more you can really understand where those limiting beliefs are coming from. Like what your family's income level looked like as a kid may affect how you view making money as an adult and what your views are on abundance, right? Or abuse from your childhood may make you fear closeness in relationships. They may make you afraid to feel love, right? Like there's a lot of things that we may not even understand about ourselves, or maybe have tried to ignore and push away for so long. But the more that we try to run from negative thoughts and feelings and ignore them and push them away, the longer it's going to take for us to grow and get past our current situations, right? So the less that we react to them, the less that we fear them, the more power we have over our own lives and our current reality, right? So hopefully that was helpful in some way. Again, I know it's so much easier said than done, but I'm definitely learning a lot from you guys as well. So definitely let me know in the comments if you guys have any experience with what I'm talking about, if you guys have worked on shadow work or just worked through some negative feelings in the past with like therapy or something, like what has worked for you. Because again, I'm not a fucking expert. I just am sharing what I'm learning as I go. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully it was helpful in some way, and I will see you guys next video.